The newsroom was a battlefield, and I was losing. My fingers froze over the keyboard as the email from my editor landed like a grenade. You're partnered with Ethan Caldwell on the Pride feature. Ethan Caldwell, me rival since journalism school. The golden boy who'd stolen my internship, my bylines, and my sanity. I was Jamie Torres, 25, scrappy and stubborn, with a chip on my shoulder bigger than the Brooklyn Bridge. Ethan, also 25, was everything I wasn't: polished, charming, and infuriatingly good at everything. Back at NYU, we'd clashed over every group project, every pitch, every professor's praise. Now, 5 years later, I'd clawed my way into the New York Pulse, a gritty outlet known for its fearless reporting. I thought I'd left Ethan behind, but here he was, waltzing into my newsroom like he owned it. The assignment was a big one, a deep dive into the lives of queer New Yorkers during Pride Month, set to run as the cover story. It was the kind of piece that could make a career or break one. I wanted it to be mine, but Ethan's name next to mine on the byline felt like a cruel joke. Worse, the newsroom was already buzzing with whispers. Jamie and Ethan. "Oh, this is going to be juicy," said Lila, our arts editor, with a smirk that made my stomach twist. I found Ethan at his desk, leaning back in his chair, tie loosened, looking like he'd just stepped out of a cologne ad. "Torres," he said, his voice smooth as whiskey, ready to lose again. "Funny, Caldwell," I shot back, crossing my arms. "Last I checked, I'm the one with the desk by the window." He grinned. "A sharp, dangerous thing. Let's see who gets the byline first." The first day was chaos. We were sent to interview a drag queen named Sapphire, who ran a community center in Harlem. The center was a vibrant hub, walls covered in rainbow murals, kids laughing in the courtyard. Sapphire, a black trans woman in her 40s, welcomed us with a warmth that softened even my edges. But Ethan took over the interview, asking questions I hadn't thought of, his pen flying across his notebook. I gritted my teeth, scribbling my own notes, determined not to let him outshine me. "Jamie, you're quiet," Sapphire said, her eyes sharp. "What's your take on this place?" I stumbled, caught off guard. "It's inspiring. A safe space in a city that's not always kind." She nodded, but Ethan jumped in, expanding on my answer with a charisma that made Sapphire laugh. I wanted to strangle him. By the time we left, my notebook was half empty, and Ethan's was brimming. Worse, Sapphire had slipped him her card, saying, "You boys come back anytime." Back at the newsroom, the tension between us crackled. "You don't have to hijack every interview," I snapped, slamming my bag onto my desk. "You don't have to sulk every time I do my job," he retorted, leaning closer. His cologne hit me, something woodsy and annoying. "We're a team now, Torres. Deal with it." The next week was no better. We were assigned to cover a queer youth shelter in Brooklyn, a place called Haven House. The director, a soft-spoken lesbian named Maria, walked us through the dorms, her voice heavy with stories of kids kicked out by their families. I felt a pang me own coming out at 16 hadn't been easy, though my mom eventually came around. Ethan, though, seemed unfazed, asking polished questions that made Maria light up. "You're good at this," she told him, and I swear I saw him blush. I hated how it made him look human. That night, we stayed late, drafting our first section. The newsroom was quiet, just the hum of computers and the distant honk of taxis. Ethan leaned over my shoulder, pointing at my screen. "You're burying the lead here. Start with the kid who ran away from Ohio." I shoved his hand away. "Don't touch my work." He raised an eyebrow, Touchy. Afraid I'll make it better. I glared. But he was right. His suggestion tightened the piece. And I hated him for it. By midnight, we'd polished 500 words. And I felt a grudging respect creeping in. Not that I'd admit it. The rumors started the next day. Lila caught us bickering by the coffee machine and grinned. You two are like an old married couple. I choked on my latte. And Ethan laughed a real laugh. Not his usual smirk. It threw me off. By lunch, the whole newsroom was in on it, whispering about Jamie and Ethan, the power couple. I wanted to scream that we were rivals, not lovers. But the more I protested, the more they laughed. The worst part, I couldn't stop noticing him. The way his jaw tensed when he was thinking. The way his eyes softened when he talked to the kids at Haven House. It was infuriating. I didn't like Ethan Caldwell. I didn't. But as we sat in a diner after another long day, splitting fries and arguing over our next lead, I caught him staring at me. Not smirking. Not mocking, just looking. And for one stupid second, I wondered what it would be like if the rumors were true. The diner's neon glow flickered across Ethan's face, making his eyes look deeper, almost vulnerable. I shook it off, blaming the late hour and too much coffee. We were rivals, not star-crossed anything, no matter what the newsroom thought. The next morning, we were back at it, chasing a lead in the West Village. Our target was Leo, a non-binary activist in their 30s who organized pride events for disabled queer folks. Their apartment was a cozy chaos of protest signs and fairy lights, and they greeted us with mugs of chai. I took the lead this time, asking about their work, their struggles. Leo's passion was infectious, and for once, Ethan let me steer the conversation. You get it, Leo said, nodding at me. You've got that fire. Reminds me of me at your age. Ethan's pen paused, and I felt a flicker of triumph. But then he chimed in, asking about accessibility laws, and Leo's face lit up. You've done your homework, they said, and I deflated. Why did he always find a way to one-up me? As we left, Ethan bumped my shoulder. Nice work in there, Torres. You almost kept up. I shoved him lightly. Don't patronize me, Caldwell. He laughed, and I hated how it warmed something in me. Back at the newsroom, we pored over our notes, our chairs inches apart. His knee brushed mine under the desk, and I froze, my face burning. He didn't seem to notice, but Lila did. Get a room. You too, she called, and the whole floor erupted in laughter. I stormed to the bathroom, splashing cold water on my face. This was ridiculous. I wasn't into Ethan. I wasn't. But the rumors were relentless, and every shared glance, every argument, felt like fuel for the fire. By the end of the week, someone had taped a heart-shaped post-it to my monitor with J+E scrawled inside. I crumpled it, but Ethan plucked it from my hand, grinning. Frameworthy, he said, tucking it into his pocket. I wanted to punch him. Or maybe not. Our next assignment took us to a queer bookstore in Manhattan, a tiny shop stuffed with zines and dog-eared novels. The owner, a grizzled gay man named Frank, shared stories of the AIDS crisis, his voice cracking as he spoke of lost friends. I felt my throat tighten, thinking of my uncle, who died before I was born. Ethan's hand brushed mine as we stood side by side. And for once, I didn't pull away. It felt grounding. That night, we worked late again, the city's hum seeping through the windows. Ethan suggested a rewrite, and I snapped. Why do you always think you're right? Because I usually am, he said, but his tone was softer, less cocky. Look, Jamie, we're good together. Our writing it clicks. I stared at him, my heart doing something stupid. Don't get used to it, I muttered, but the words lacked bite. The next day, we interviewed a trans teen named Riley at a youth center. Riley was shy, their voice barely above a whisper, but their story off finding their name. Their truth hit me hard. I saw Ethan's eyes soften too, and when Riley mentioned feeling alone, Ethan shared a story about his cousin, who'd come out as trans years ago. It was the first time I'd heard him talk about anything personal, and it threw me. Who was this guy? Back at the office, the rumors were out of control. A coworker caught us laughing over a typo, and by noon, the betting pool on when Jamie and Ethan get together had reached $200. I wanted to scream that it wasn't like that, but every time I opened my mouth, Ethan would flash that infuriating grin, and I'd lose my nerve. That evening, we ended up at a bar with the team, a rare night off. Ethan bought me a beer, and we sat in a corner, away from the chaos. Why do you hate me so much? He asked suddenly, his voice low. I blinked, caught off guard. I don't hate you. You're you. Always perfect. Always winning. He leaned closer, his eyes searching mine. You think I'm perfect? That's news to me. I laughed, despite myself. The beer, the late hour, the way his knee pressed against my night all felt dangerous. And when he leaned in, just a fraction, I didn't pull away. For one reckless moment, I thought he might kiss me. But then Lila shouted for us to join a game of darts, and the moment shattered. As we walked back to our apartments, the city alive around us, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. Ethan wasn't just my rival anymore, but what he was, I couldn't name. The city was a blur of lights as we walked, Ethan's shoulder brushing mine every few steps. I told myself it was the cold October air making my skin prickle, not him. But the silence between us felt charged, like a story waiting to be written. The next morning, our editor, Claire, called us into her office. You two are killing it, she said, tossing our draft across her desk. But I need more heart. Dig deeper. Find the soul of pride. Ethan nodded. All business. But I caught the glint in his eye. He loved a challenge. So did I. But sharing one with him felt like dancing on a tightrope. We were assigned to cover a ballroom event in the Bronx, a celebration of queer Black and Latinx culture. The venue was electric music pulsing, performers strutting in glittering outfits. We met Kiki, a 28-year-old voguer who radiated confidence. Their story of finding family in the ballroom scene hit me like a punch. I took furious notes, determined to outdo Ethan. But he was right there, asking Kiki about their first house, their chosen name. Kiki laughed, pulling us into a hug. You two are adorable, they said. Y'all together? No, I blurted, too fast. Ethan just smirked, and I wanted to disappear. Back at the newsroom, the rumors were a wildfire. Someone had overheard Kiki's comment, and now the betting pool was up to $300. I caught Ethan laughing with Lila, and when he saw me, he winked. I stormed to my desk, burying myself in edits, but his voice cut through. Torres, you're blushing. Shut up, I muttered, my face hot. The worst part, I couldn't stop picturing that moment in the bar, his breath close, his eyes locked on mine. Our next stop was a queer elders group in Queens. We met Gloria, a 70-year-old lesbian who'd lived through Stonewall. Her story soft love, loss, and defiance made my chest ache. I glanced at Ethan, expecting his usual polish, but he was quiet, his eyes distant. When Gloria mentioned her late partner, Ethan's hand twitched, like he wanted to reach for something. Or someone. After, We grabbed coffee at a bodega, the air thick with unspoken words. "You okay?" I asked, surprising myself. He hesitated, then said, "My dad, he wasn't great when I came out." Gloria's story just hit me. I froze. Ethan, vulnerable. It didn't compute. I didn't know. I said softly, "Yeah, well, I don't advertise it." He sipped his coffee, avoiding my eyes. "What about you? You never talk about your family." I shrugged, my guard still up. "Mom's cool now, but it was rough at first. Small town Jersey. You know." He nodded, and for once, we weren't fighting. We were just talking. It felt like a truce, fragile but real. The next day, we were back in the newsroom, hammering out our draft. Ethan's suggestions were sharp, but I noticed he was listening to mine too. Our voices overlapped, finishing each other's sentences. And when our hands brushed over the keyboard, I didn't pull away. Lila walked by, muttering, "Told you they're in love." And I didn't even flinch. That night, we were sent to cover a drag show fundraiser in Chelsea. The club was packed, the air thick with glitter and sweat. We interviewed a performer named Velvet, a trans woman with a laugh that filled the room. She teased us, saying, "You two have chemistry. Don't waste it." I laughed it off, but Ethan's eyes lingered on me, and my heart did that stupid flip again. After the show, we ended up on a rooftop, the city skyline sprawling below. The air was crisp, and Ethan's shoulder was warm against mine. "Why do you let them get to you?" he asked, his voice low. "The rumors." "Because they're wrong," I said, too quickly. "We're not like that." He turned to face me, his expression unreadable. "What if they're not wrong?" My breath caught. The world tilted, the city lights blurring. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed Claire, demanding our draft by morning. The moment broke, but Ethan's words echoed in my head all night. Ethan's question hung in the air like smoke, impossible to ignore. I barely slept, replaying it until my head ached. By morning, I was a mess, but the newsroom didn't care about my feelings. It demanded results. We were sent to a queer community garden in Brooklyn, a patch of green amidst the concrete. The organizer, a gay man named Marcus, showed us rows of vegetables planted by local teens. His pride in their work was contagious, and I found myself smiling as he talked about community, about roots. Ethan, though, was quieter than usual, his usual charm dialed down. I caught him watching me as I interviewed a shy teen named Sam, who'd found solace in the garden after being kicked out by their parents. "You're good with them," Ethan said later, as we walked to the subway. His voice was soft, almost hesitant. "Just doing my job," I muttered, but his words warmed me. I hated how much I cared. Back at the newsroom, we hit a wall. Our draft was good, but Claire wanted more, something raw, something that bled. We argued over every word, our voices rising until the whole floor stared. "You're too cautious," Ethan snapped. "This story needs guts." "And you're too reckless," I shot back. "You'll ruin it with your showboating." He leaned in, eyes blazing. "Maybe I'm trying to make it better, not win." I froze, caught off guard by his intensity. For a second, I thought he might grab me or kiss me. Instead, he stormed off, leaving me staring at my screen, heart pounding. The rumors didn't help. By now, the betting pool was at $400, and someone had left a rainbow flag sticker on my chair. I tore it off, but Ethan caught me, laughing. "You're fighting a losing battle, Torres." "Shut up," I said, but I was smiling, and he knew it. Our next assignment was a Pride Parade float workshop in a warehouse in Red Hook. The space was alive with paint cans and glitter. Volunteers laughing as they built a float shaped like a phoenix. We interviewed a couple, Mia and Tara, two women in their 30s who'd met at last year's parade. Their love story was electric, and I felt a pang, wondering what it would be like to have that kind of certainty. Ethan was quieter again, his questions thoughtful but restrained. When Mia teased us about being cute together, I braced for his usual smirk, but he just looked at me, his expression soft. "Yeah," he said quietly. "We're something." My heart stopped. I mumbled an excuse and fled to the bathroom, splashing water on my face. This wasn't happening. I didn't like Ethan. I didn't. That night, we stayed late again, the newsroom empty except for us. We were close to a breakthrough on the piece, but the tension between us was thicker than ever. "Why did you say that?" I blurted, unable to hold it in. "At the workshop. About us being something." He looked at me, his eyes steady. "Because it's true. You feel it too, don't you?" I opened my mouth to deny it, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I grabbed my bag and left, my heart racing. The city streets were a blur as I walked home, Ethan's words chasing me. He was my rival, my enemy. But what if he wasn't? The next day, we were sent to a queer veterans group in Staten Island. The story soft service, sacrifice, and secrecy at heart. One vet, a gay man named Tom, talked about hiding his identity in the military, his voice heavy with regret. Ethan's questions were gentle, and when Tom teared up, Ethan handed him a tissue, his hand lingering. On the ferry back, we stood at the rail, the city skyline glowing. "You were good with him," I said, breaking the silence. Ethan shrugged, but his eyes were soft. "You too. You always are." I looked away, my chest tight. The rumors, the glances, the moments they were piling up, and I couldn't keep pretending I didn't feel it. But admitting it meant risking everything, my pride, my career, my heart. As we docked, Ethan's hand brushed mine, and this time, I didn't pull away. The city hummed around us, and for the first time, I wondered if the newsroom was right. The ferry's hum faded, but my pulse didn't. Ethan's hand lingered near mine, and I felt the weight of every unspoken word between us. I wanted to run, but my feet stayed rooted, tethered to him. The next morning, Claire dropped a bomb. Our feature was being fast-tracked for the Sunday edition. We had 3 days to finalize 8,000 words, and the pressure was crushing. The newsroom became our universe, coffee cups piling up, screens glowing. Ethan and I trading drafts like soldiers passing ammo. Every argument felt like foreplay, every compromise a confession. I hated how much I loved it. We were sent to a queer theater troupe in Hell's Kitchen, a group staging a play about love in the face of hate. The director, a flamboyant gay man named Javier, welcomed us with open arms. His cast was a mix of ages and identities, their rehearsals raw and electric. I watched Ethan charm them, his questions drawing out stories of resilience. But when a young actor, Alex, shared their fear of coming out, I saw Ethan's mask slip. He looked at me, and I knew he was thinking of his dad. After, we grabbed tacos from a food truck, sitting on a park bench as the city buzzed around us. "You ever think about quitting?" I asked, surprising myself. "This job. I mean, the pressure, the rumors." He chewed slowly, then shook his head. "Nah. This is who I am. You." "Same," I said, and for once, we were on the same page. It felt dangerous, like we were building something neither of us could control. Back at the newsroom, the rumors hit a fever pitch. Someone had caught us laughing at the food truck, and now there was a group chat dedicated to Jamie and Ethan's love story. I wanted to scream, but Ethan just shrugged, saying, "Let them talk. We've got a deadline." We worked through the night, our desks a mess of notes and energy drinks. At 2 a.m., Ethan leaned over, pointing at my screen. "This part about Alexit's good, but it needs more of you." "What's that supposed to mean?" I asked. "Defensive." "Your heart, Torres. Put it in there. People need to feel it." I stared at him, my throat tight. He was right, but it meant exposing a piece of myself I'd kept locked away. I rewrote the section, weaving in my own fears from when I came out, the ache of wanting to be seen. When Ethan read it, he didn't say anything, just nodded, his eyes soft. It was enough. The next day, we interviewed a queer imam named Aisha at a progressive mosque in Brooklyn. Her story off balancing faith and identity felt like a mirror. I saw Ethan listening, really listening, and when Aisha spoke about love as resistance, he reached for my hand under the table. It was quick, but it burned. We left in silence, the weight of her words settling over us. On the subway, Ethan leaned close, his voice low. "You ever wonder what we're doing? Not the stories." I swallowed hard. All the time. He didn't push, but his eyes stayed on me, and I felt the world shrinking to just us. Back at the newsroom, we polished the piece, our hands brushing as we passed drafts. Lila walked by, whispering, "Told you," and I didn't bother arguing. That night, we ended up at a diner, too wired to sleep. The waitress, an older woman with a thick Bronx accent, called us sweethearts and comped our coffee. Ethan laughed, and I felt myself falling, hard and fast. When he walked me home, the city quiet around us, he stopped at my stoop. "Jamie," he said, his voice rough, "I don't want to be your rival anymore." My heart stopped. I wanted to say something, anything, but my phone buzzed Claire, with last-minute notes. I cursed, and Ethan laughed, the tension breaking. But as he walked away, I knew we weren't done. The next morning, we submitted our draft. Claire read it in silence, then looked up, her eyes shining. "This is it. This is the soul I wanted." I glanced at Ethan, and for the first time, I didn't care about the byline. I cared about him. Claire's approval was a high, but Ethan's words from the night before were a drug I couldn't shake. "I didn't want to be your rival anymore." They echoed as we dove into final edits, the newsroom a blur of deadlines and adrenaline. Our last assignment was a pride festival in Central Park, a sea of rainbows and music. We interviewed a couple, Sam and Jordan, two non-binary teens who'd found each other through a youth group. Their shy smiles and clasped hands made my chest ache. Ethan's questions were gentle, and when Jordan mentioned their fear of losing family, Ethan shared a piece of his own story: his dad's rejection, his mom's quiet support. I stared at him, seeing layers I'd never noticed. "You're full of surprises, Caldwell," I said as we walked through the festival, dodging glitter bombs and drag queens. He grinned, but it was softer, less cocky. "You're not so bad yourself, Torres." The festival was electric, but the newsroom rumors were louder. Someone had snapped a photo of us at the park, laughing, our shoulders touching. By noon, it was pinned to the bulletin board with "power couple" scrawled across it. I ripped it down, but Ethan just laughed, saying, "They're not entirely wrong." I glared, but my heart wasn't in it. The truth was, I didn't know what we were anymore. Rivals. Partners. Something else. Every touch, every glance, felt like a step towards something I couldn't name. That night, we worked late, the city's glow filtering through the windows. Our piece was nearly done, but Claire wanted one final section, a personal reflection on what pride meant to us. I froze. Writing about myself felt like stripping naked in the newsroom. Ethan went first, his words raw and unpolished. He wrote about his dad, about learning to love himself despite the rejection. I read it, my throat tight, and saw him in a new light, not the golden boy, but someone who'd fought for his place. Just like me. Your turn, he said, his voice gentle. I hesitated, then wrote about my own coming out, the fear of losing my mom, the relief when she hugged me and said, "You're still my Jamie." When Ethan read it, he didn't say anything, just reached for my hand, squeezing it once before letting go. The next day, we submitted the final piece. Claire called it a masterpiece, but I barely heard her. All I could think about was Ethan, sitting across from me, his eyes steady and warm. The newsroom was quiet, most of the team gone for the weekend. It was just us, the air thick with everything we hadn't said. "Let's get out of here," Ethan said suddenly, standing. "One drink. No work." I followed him to a bar in the village, a cozy spot with low lights and jazz. We sat in a corner, beers in hand, and for once, we didn't talk about the story. We talked about everything else: movies, music, the time I got lost in Central Park as a kid. He laughed, and I realized I'd never heard him laugh like that. Free and real. "Why do you push my buttons?" I asked, half serious. He leaned closer, his voice low. "Because you're worth pushing, Jamie." My breath caught. The bar faded, and it was just us, the space between us shrinking. His hand brushed mine, and this time, I didn't pull away. I leaned in, and so did he, our lips inches apart. But then my phone buzzed. Claire, with a last-minute question about the piece. I cursed, and Ethan laughed, but the moment lingered, heavy and unfinished. As we walked home, the city alive around us, I felt it shift, the pull. Ethan wasn't my rival anymore. He was something else, something I was terrified to name. But as he stopped at my stoop, his eyes searching mine, I knew I couldn't run from it much longer. The air on my stoop was cold, but Ethan's gaze was warm, pinning me in place. I wanted to say something, to bridge the gap between us, but my voice failed. He smiled, soft and knowing, then turned to leave, his footsteps echoing in the quiet night. The next day, the newsroom was a circus. Our piece was set to print, and the buzz was deafening. Colleagues slapped our backs, calling it the story of the year. But all I could think about was Ethan, sitting across from me, his tie loose, his eyes catching mine every few minutes. The rumors were relentless. Someone had made a J+E playlist, and it was blasting in the break room. I wanted to hate it, but I didn't. We were sent to a final interview, a wrap-up with Sapphire at the Harlem Community Center. She greeted us like old friends, her smile wide. "You two look different," she said, her eyes sharp. "Happier." I mumbled something about deadlines, but Ethan just grinned, his shoulder brushing mine. We talked about the center's impact, about pride as a lifeline. Sapphire's words were fire, and I felt my own resolve hardening. This story wasn't just a byline, it was a chance to amplify voices like hers. Back at the newsroom, we polished the final draft, our chairs so close our knees touched. Every brush of his arm sent a jolt through me, and I caught him watching me, his expression unreadable. "What?" I asked, my voice sharper than I meant. "Nothing," he said, but his smile said otherwise. That night, the paper threw a launch party at a rooftop bar in Midtown. The city sparkled below, and our piece was the talk of the night. Claire toasted us, calling us the dream team. The crowd cheered, but I felt exposed, like everyone could see the truth in my eyes. Ethan found me by the railing, a beer in his hand. "You okay?" he asked, his voice low. I nodded, but I wasn't. The rumors, the story, it was too much. "Why do you keep doing this?" I asked, my voice breaking, acting like there's something here. He stepped closer, his eyes intense. "Because there is. Jamie. You know it." I shook my head, but my heart was racing. "We're rivals. We've always been rivals." "Not anymore," he said, his voice steady. "Not for a long time." The world tilted. I wanted to argue, to push him away, but I couldn't. He was right, and I hated it. Hated how much I wanted him to be right. Before I could speak, Lila appeared, dragging us into a group photo. The moment broke, but Ethan's hand lingered on my back, warm and steady. The next day, our piece hit the stands. The response was overwhelming. Mails, calls, messages from readers who saw themselves in the stories we'd told. I felt proud, but hollow. The story was done, but Ethan and I weren't. That evening, he showed up at my apartment, unannounced. "We need to talk," he said, his voice urgent. I let him in, my heart pounding. The living room was small, cluttered with books and takeout containers, but it felt smaller with him there, filling the space. "What do you want, Ethan?" I asked, my voice raw. "You," he said simply. "I want you, Jamie. I've wanted you since NYU, and I'm tired of pretending." My breath caught. The room spun, and every wall I'd built crumbled. I stepped closer, my hand shaking. "You're an idiot," I whispered, but I was smiling. He laughed, and then he kissed me. It was soft at first, then desperate, like we'd been waiting years for this. And maybe we had. When we pulled apart, I was breathless, my heart full. "The newsroom's gonna lose it," I said, laughing. "Let them," he said, his forehead against mine. "We'll prove them right." Ethan's forehead rested against mine, his breath warm and steady. The world outside my apartment faded, and for the first time, I didn't care about the newsroom, the rumors, or the byline. It was just us, and it felt right. The next morning, we walked into the newsroom together, and the air shifted. Lila's jaw dropped, and someone whistled. The betting pool hit $500 before noon, and I didn't bother denying the rumors anymore. Ethan's hand brushed mine as we sat at our desks, and I let it linger, a quiet rebellion against my own fears. Our piece was a hit, shared across social media, quoted in blogs, even picked up by national outlets. Readers sent letters, thanking us for telling their stories. Sapphire called, inviting us back to the community center for a celebration. At the event, surrounded by the people we'd written about, I felt a pride deeper than any byline. Ethan stood beside me, his smile brighter than the Harlem sun. But it wasn't all smooth. My mom called, asking about the cute coworker she'd heard about from my cousin, who'd seen the photo from the festival. I stammered, unprepared, but Ethan grabbed the phone, charming her with stories about our interviews. When I took it back, she whispered, "He sounds like a keeper. Jamie." I glanced at Ethan, laughing with Sapphire, and my heart agreed. The newsroom never let up. Lila made us matching power couple mugs, and Claire started pitching us as a permanent team. I bristled at first. Ethan was still Ethan, after all, but the idea grew on me. We were good together, in ways I'd never imagined. One night, We ended up back on the rooftop where it all started. The city sprawling below. The air was crisp, and Ethan's arm was warm around me. "You ever think about what's next?" he asked, his voice soft. I leaned into him, the weight of his question settling. "Yeah. More stories. More fights. More us." He smiled, pulling me closer. "Sounds like a plan." Our story didn't end with the feature. It grew, messy and real, through late-night edits, stolen kisses, and arguments that always ended in laughter. The newsroom called us lovers. And for once, I didn't correct them. Ethan wasn't my rival anymore, was my partner. In every sense. As Pride Month faded, we started a new project, this time about queer families. We interviewed parents, kids, chosen families, each story a thread in the tapestry we'd begun. Every word we wrote felt like a promisito to the people we met, to each other, to ourselves. One evening, as we walked through the village, hand in hand, Ethan stopped under a streetlight. "I'm glad it was you," he said, his eyes steady. "This story, everything." I squeezed his hand, my heart full. Me too. The city hummed around us, alive with possibility. We weren't just a story anymore, we were the authors, writing our own ending, one moment at a time. And it was enough.